President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to establish a judicial commission of inquiry that will look into whether attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to the National Prosecuting Authority. The TRC made more than 400 referrals to the NPA, but there's been criticism that the National Prosecuting Authority has not followed through. The establishment of the Commission of Inquiry is the outcome of a settlement from discussions between the state and families of apartheid-era victims who said not enough was being done. Let's get the view now of Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi. Welcome to SABC, Minister. Good to have your time this evening. Let's start with the timing of this, because ultimately this establishment of the Commission of Inquiry comes from the pressure that was put to bear on the government by the families of apartheid-era crimes, of the families of people who suffered apartheid-era crimes.
No, good evening to you and good evening to your viewers at home. Definitely, as we heard the President this afternoon announce a commission of inquiry, this follows. We've been in court as government with the families, about 22 families and one foundation and others too, who had intended to join the matter in court as part of saying the state has not done enough in terms of dealing with apartheid crimes, prosecuting apartheid crimes, but also saying that there's been those who have been involved in protecting or preventing the prosecution of apartheid crimes, and therefore they wanted compensation around that. So there are several prayers that they are making. And we as the state believe that we do not agree that there are people who deliberately stopped the prosecution of apartheid crimes. And therefore, that's why it then led to the issue of agreeing to the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry to determine if indeed there's anyone who within the state, any organ of the state that has stopped, and who that person is and why did they stop it.
How can you confidently say that the state does not believe that there were people, let's say even in agencies like the NPA, who may have obstructed any quest for justice related to the apartheid-era crimes without, for example, a conclusive finding from a court from this inquiry that will now begin?
Look, from the people that we interact with, obviously, it will be that basis that we make. Hence, the President has agreed to do the Commission of Inquiry, to say if the families of the victims believes that they are individuals who must account, therefore the best place to do that would be the Commission of Inquiry, to determine indeed if that is so. And remember, this is one of their prayers in terms of the court application, which we have acceded to as government, and the President has announced the establishment of that. We've shared with the families through the lawyers and the team as part of the process of negotiating the terms of reference. They've agreed to them, and therefore the establishment. There are other prayers that they are making, for example, compensation. And we are saying let's allow the Commission of Inquiry to determine those, if indeed there is a need, and if there's a compensation, what amounts of compensation should be made.
It would be shameful and shocking if true that people who worked for any of the law enforcement agencies in this country actively obstructed the quest for justice for apartheid-era crimes post-1994 in a country that was led for much of this period solely by the ANC, a former liberation movement that itself lost members.
Look, it will be said, I think the issue, that's why we're going into various angles, and that's why we say, if you note the case, you'd note that myself and the President and Minister of Police said we can't oppose, because you understand the impact of what apartheid has done to these families. We understand that for us to be able to live in a democratic and free South Africa, and where families can literally say that they have now moved on, they deserve those answers. And that's why we are saying, within the work that we have done, the institutions, then we'll have to understand who are these people and whether any leader has given, because sometimes it's assumed that this is sanctioned. For example, you are saying under the leadership of the NC. I, since I've been member of the NC, have never sat in a structure or meeting of the NC that would have said that people should not do this. So individuals who would have done it would have to answer. And that's why the president is the head of state. But also we can't remove from the fact that he's the president of the NC, has agreed to say, if there are people who must account for this, they must be brought to account.
The families are upset, though, because they basically had to take a democratic government to court to get the ball rolling on this. Some were even threatening at some point to sue. They want about 167, million rand in compensation. I know that's still a matter of contention between yourselves and them. So would it have happened if they had not have taken you to court? Because it's been 31 years.
Look, the issue of TRC, of the TRC Commission of Inquiry. Remember, when you look at the entirety of the TRC implementation report, there's a lot of work that has been done. There would have been, for example, the issue of handing over of the bodies, identification of the bodies, the remains of those who were killed by apartheid and buried in marked graves without giving them the dignity, have been handed over to various families. This Saturday, we're handing two remains to the families and having reburials. This has been done by the ANC government or by the government within the democratic state. Secondly, you would have had that children of whose families or whose parents were listed in the TRC have been receiving bursaries in terms of state as part of TRC. There would have been community projects as identified with communities as part of reconciliation. There would be payments, once-off payments that have been done to families. There would be now the process that we are embarking on of rebuilding the houses that have been destroyed. And then the issue of inquests that you would have seen, the Timon and others that are coming, the Galata 4 is coming in June. So there's a lot of work that has been done in terms of responding to the issues as per the report adopted by Parliament on TRC matters.
Very quickly and briefly, please, ma'am, if you can, there were about 400 referrals made by the TRC to the NPA. Will this inquiry deal with all of them? When can we expect the terms of reference and the appointment of the person who will chair the process? And in fact, do you expect you'll be able to do this for less than the 167 million rand that the families wanted in compensation? The Zondo inquiry, for example, cost close to R1 billion and ran over several years.
Look, the terms of reference have been finalized, have been agreed upon. The president, as he announced the inquiry, the Commission of Inquiry, has done this at the backdrop of approved terms of reference. In terms of the judge, he has to do that in consultation with Chief Justice, which that process is being concluded, so would be able to fully start the process of the inquiry. In terms of the cost and the estimation of time, we are looking at not taking this too long. The families have agreed to be part of the monitoring so that we do not take long in terms of that. But on the back of that, it's also a court process. So we are reporting to the court in June, where we would be able to give as well fuller timeframes of how to conclude. But we want to have this conversation first with the judge that would be appointed to chair this commission as part of what is realistic in terms of concluding the process. This Commission of Inquiry is as per request by the families, I must emphasize.
Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, good to talk to you. Lots more to unpack regarding this development, but for now we'll have to leave it there this evening.